Gravity Max is Taiwan's most famous roller coaster, operating as the first tilt coaster ever built. Riders will board a 24-passenger train that will climb up 114 feet in the air, come to a stop on a horizontal section of track that will then break apart, slowly tilt 90 degrees straight down, dangling passengers over this broken rail until it eventually reconnects, releases, and then drops you into a tunnel through a single vertical loop, helix, and the brake run. For over 20 years, this operated as the only tilt coaster that Dutch manufacturer Vekoma ever constructed. That is, until Siren's Curse opened up at Ohio's Cedar Point in summer 2025. I had the amazing opportunity of experiencing Gravity Max before Siren's Curse, back when it was the only operating Vekoma tilt coaster, and it was a really cool experience. I genuinely loved this attraction, and it is what got me even more excited for Vekoma's new generation of tilt coasters. I was always surprised that when this opened in 2002, that no other parks jumped on board. It seems like such a brilliant concept, especially nowadays in the age of social media. Parks are constantly seeking that next big thing. How can we draw in guests from all over? And you can do that by having an OMG would you ride this attraction. And I don't think any roller coaster does it quite as well as a tilt coaster. Just the concept of separating from a piece of track where you are putting all your trust into the engineering of this attraction, because if it fails, that's it. But fortunately, the teams at Vekoma are incredibly talented, and Gravity Max has operated without issue for over 20 years and has gained this legendary status. For coaster fans, this might be the reason you go to Taiwan. I know back when we were planning this big Asia trip in 2024, Gravity Max was near the top of my bucket list. I'd seen so many pictures and video that I just had to experience it for myself. And it did not disappoint. I walked away with 10 rides on this attraction because when we went to Liphao Discovery World, we were some of the only people there. The timing actually ended up being terrible, where we were in the country right before a big typhoon hit. The place was a ghost town, but somehow they remained open, and we were some of the only people that were crazy enough to still visit. But it was so worth it. I genuinely had a blast on this attraction, and in this review, I'm going to be walking you through the entire experience that Gravity Max offers, which, as I alluded to, isn't a whole lot. We're dealing with less than 2,000 feet of track. That being said, the ride time is actually rather long because of how long that tilting mechanism takes. This is a slow build that really helps build your anticipation, or for many, anxiety. I've now had the opportunity of experiencing Siren's Curse over at Cedar Point and could kind of do a side-by-side comparison of how the new generation tilt coaster compares to the original. And one thing I immediately noticed is that the new tilt happens a lot faster. That's great for capacity. Over at Discovery World, you don't really need to worry about that. I've heard horror stories of some people who have visited this park and had to wait 15 minutes between cycles because the operators had to let the attraction cool down, which is definitely not how that's supposed to work. Luckily for us, we did not have that issue. When you reach the top of this lift, you're gazing out at this beautiful view of this park, which in actuality is not that big. It's part of this larger complex, so you can see the nearby hotel, the beautiful mountains in the background. I loved that we had time to take this all in. And I really enjoyed it once I, got over that initial fear, because as a seasoned coaster enthusiast, there's not too many attractions that actually get my blood rushing. But riding Gravity Max for my first time, man, when we got to the top there, my heart was pounding. I was like, what is this gonna feel like? Discovery World has this intense music playing, the claw locks onto the back of the vehicle, and the track slowly starts to tilt. The blood starts rushing to your head as you're dangling over. If you're sitting towards the back, you are rising up higher than that initial lift height, which was so weird to experience. Gravity Max operates with a traditional ratcheting over the shoulder restraint, and so for that reason, you actually have a decent amount of room, so your whole body kind of falls forward, pressed up against this restraint, and when you eventually drop, your body will fly into the back of your seat. That initial release gives you a good amount of airtime, which was something different than what you experience over at Siren's Curse, because these new generation Vekoma trains have a vest. That's designed to keep you a bit more pressed up against your seat, so you don't have that falling back sensation on the drop. Now luckily, Siren's Curse makes up for it with the rest of the layout, whereas Gravity Max is kind of a one-trick pony. And if we want to do like a one-to-one comparison, I think you can liken the tilt and drop mechanism to what B&M does with their dive coasters. The first dive coaster to open to the public was at Alton Towers called Oblivion. It had a very similar setup with a quick hold at the top, a vertical drop underground, and then you hit the brake run. That was it. Dive coasters have since gotten a lot more elaborate with more substantial layouts, but ultimately the original intent behind the dive coaster was an OMG wow moment that was a one-trick pony. And those became immensely popular. Literally a mirror image of Oblivion exists in the same country as Gravity Max, just down south at Janfusen Fancy World, Diving Machine G5. And if I had to choose which one of those I'd rather ride, yeah, I'm taking Gravity Max. I think Vekoma came up with the better scare for a drop. And I think if there's one thing I didn't expect with Gravity Max was also just how intense it would be. From the moment you descend down that drop, you're pulling a lot of positive G-forces. I grade out every single time. You'll drop underground into a tunnel navigating around this tight curve before you eventually shoot up into a vertical loop. A massive one, if I might add. That's where I kind of came to and regained my vision. But it was certainly a whoa, what just happened kind of feeling. And following that loop, that's when you navigate around this helix and eventually come to a stop at the brake run. Those brakes are sharp. I slammed into the back of my seat every time. But wow, what a ride. For an attraction that's been operating for over 20 years, Gravity Max is remarkably smooth. I still would recommend keeping your head forward just so that you prevent any possibility of headbanging, but Discovery World has done a nice job maintaining this thing. Many of these old Vekomas have not aged well, and Gravity Max is exempt, and that makes me so happy. I love that the original tilt coaster has held up so well. It was so cool to experience. To this day, I kind of have to like pinch myself that I actually got to experience this. And the fact that it lived up to the hype just makes it even more special. I am curious though, now that we have more of these new tilt coasters opening up around the world, I wonder if Gravity Max will lose its pizzazz. Like that intrigue or lore that always came with it in discussion. My guess is now that tilt coasters are becoming a bit more mainstream, yeah, I unfortunately think it will lose some of that. For people who travel to do roller coasters, there will always be a novelty of doing the original, but maybe there'll be more of a draw to go experience one of their newer iterations because Vekoma has since improved upon that design. I think for what it is though, Gravity Max is still a fantastic addition. It still blows my mind that it exists at this random park. Discovery World opened just 1 year prior to Gravity Max and has no other major thrill rides. It's just some small family attractions and then Gravity Max. And as we were looking around at the few guests that were in the park that day, many of them were too scared to ride it. Everyone would stand around and watch Gravity Max tilt, but many would not walk up the entrance, or those that did would ride it once and then move on. We were the weirdos who kept going around over and over and over again. But honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. So for Gravity Max's final score, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. Yeah, a little bit more track length would have been nice. That's probably the only reason it's not getting a perfect score. It is short, but everything that comes with it is fantastic. I really have no major complaints. My number one worry was, is it going to be smooth? And it was. And that tilt really exceeded my expectations. So I give Gravity Max a huge thumbs up. Come out to Liphao Discovery World in Taiwan if you want to experience the world's first tilt coaster. And let me know down in the comments below if you've had the opportunity to experience Gravity Max or even Siren's Curse, what you thought of the tilting mechanism. And make sure to stay tuned for more coaster reviews here at Coaster Studios. And I'll see you next time.